Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Ooh, we got a good one on our hands if you are a horror fan. Now, it's not the most perfect movie in the world, but I swear to you, this thing does some really nice things, and what it is setting up in this upcoming Netflix trilogy event they have going on, I'm pretty freaking stoked. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler-free and a little spoilery into Fear Street, Part 1, 1994. And like I said, man, I am excited, and I am excited about all things Fear Street. And if you follow me, you probably got a little bit of a taste of that yesterday. I reacted to the trilogy official trailer, the official trailer to 1994, and the first 5 minutes of 1994. Those are all up. You'll see links pop to those above there. If you haven't seen them, you want to check out those reactions. And the two trailers were things that I reacted to in the past and only posted yesterday, but it all just got me real hyped to jump into Fear Street, specifically into 1994. And between watching those things and just knowing what I know about what this series is going to be, I'm so stoked. Like, the concept in and of itself, I think, is genius. The idea of creating a trilogy around this series of R.L. Stine books, which, unfortunately, I haven't read. I was a big Goosebumps fan, but I didn't check out Fear Street. I do have a friend who read Fear Street, and we talked, and we're pretty in line on what we're thinking. So that makes me feel pretty good, considering I don't have the source material knowledge. But just the concept of taking these three movies and putting them in three different, very distinctive horror eras, right? Like, when you're talking about slasher flicks, I think the 70s and the 90s are the first two things you think about, at least if you're me, as you can see. Those are my two favorite realms. I think the 70s is where we got some of the most classic slasher films ever, and is really where the blueprint came from for those. And the 90s, I think, just kind of added it, gave it a little flavor, and being a 90s kid myself, like, that stuff just hits for me. And then the idea of going back to the 1600s for that 1666 movie, and tying in witchcraft and some of the supernatural type elements that can get, like, super dark and super creepy. Like, you're just hitting three areas of horror that I adore. And just the idea of delivering a trilogy on 3 consecutive Fridays, almost like a mini-series, like, that's a really cool thing for me. Like, the television mini-series was something huge when I was growing up, man. You get them all the time. You get all stoked. Like, oh, man, for the next, like, 3 or 4 nights, you're going to get, like, all this cool content. And I love this idea, being that Netflix doesn't ever do weekly releases. Like, this is kind of a neat way to kind of maybe test that out if you're Netflix and see if that's something you want to get into. But it's certainly fun to know you're getting a trilogy all up front. You're not going to have to wait a super long time. And in getting excited in some of the stuff I was watching yesterday, I gotta say, I think Leigh Janiak has a real firm grasp on what she's doing. And when we're looking at Part 1, 1994 in particular, I think she has a really firm grasp on the 90s slasher flick. Like, this movie looks and feels like it could have belonged back in that set of 90s movies. I love the aesthetic. I think visually it looks really, really nice. She creates a couple moments in the movie that definitely are hardcore visual nostalgia pulls from that era of horror movies. I think she totally knows how to balance humor and levity, and even, you know, not directly poke fun at the genre the way, like, say, Scream did, but just kind of hit some of those classic beats, even if they are super campy or super predictable. Like, all of those things just go into that formula, and I think from the aesthetics standpoint, you know, she delivers there. It looks and feels right, and I love all of this, right? Like, that purple, blue kind of hue she puts in a couple of the sequences in this one. Like, all of those things were really working for me, but what she does the best is her staging of the horror scenes. I think her staging is really wonderful. While I think the movie suffers a little bit because of the script and a couple of the performances, and that kind of plays into the dip that we kind of struggle with. The first 2 acts are not, like, knock you off your feet acts. Like, I think they're solid. I think they're a little slow a couple of times. Like I said, some of the story stuff, and we'll talk about it, didn't quite hit for me. And I think that just didn't play well into some of the things that she had to build into. And those first two acts kind of stay small, but the execution on those smaller horror sequences, specifically the opening, which I reacted to the first 5 minutes to yesterday. I think the entire sequence is about 7 or 8 minutes. Features Maya Hawke. Wonderful, man. It's like one of those classic, like you open and you're like, I know everybody that I see right now not getting out of this sequence, and really kind of executed that in a way where I was like, that's the type of opening you want going into this type of movie. And then, like, you know, some of the smaller kills, they work because, like I said, that balance of the levity and the lightness and some of the humor and the fun. You will have fun watching this movie. While I don't think it's as serious or as dramatic as the next two movies could be, it definitely taps into that spirit of, like, enjoying yourself, and then hitting you with, like, a really messed up murder. And while the early ones are, like I said, smaller, what she builds in the back third of this movie, oh, it's so good, man. Like, the end of the school sequence and everything that we get inside the grocery store, like, all of it was just excellent, and from shooting to staging to plotting out where, like, you could see how certain things were going to play. Like, I just really dug all of that stuff. And that's what gets me excited. I think the momentum and where Janiak ends 1994 should just have you really pumped for 1978 and then 1666, as you can go to some of the darker, more grittier kind of interesting elements, I think, to this overall story. Now, for me, where some of the struggles take place are in the writing, and specifically in the first two acts. Now, while I think Kyle Killen and Phil Graziati definitely also understand the 1990s horror slasher kind of genre, and definitely hit and play into, you know, some of those beats with the script, and certainly on the humor side, the stuff that's light, the stuff that's fun, the stuff that features our characters: Josh, played by Benjamin Flores Jr., Kate, played by Julia Rehwald, and Simon, played by Fred Hechinger. Anything around those three characters, really, really excellent stuff. The problem I have, and where you kind of trip up a little bit in some of the pacing and some of the down moments in those first two acts, come around the characters of Deena and Samantha. I just did not like either character very much, and they're pretty integral to the story and to the overall story that I think is being told over the course of these three movies. And that is a little worrisome, because I just wasn't digging the characters. Like, Deena, I didn't like the way she handled any of the situations that she was presented. I really don't like how she handles and the back and forth in the relationship that her and Sam have had. Like, there's all that stuff was just kind of clunky for me, and Sam is just a bleh kind of character. And the performances also behind those two characters just don't hit. You know, I think Kiana Madeira is very striking visually. Like, when she comes on and to the screen, like, she's definitely someone who can capture your attention, but her delivery, I don't know, man, there was something not just a little bit off about it that just didn't quite work for me. And the same with Olivia Scott Welch. And I don't know if it's just because of the writing and the material that they're given. Like, maybe it could get better as we go, but, like, I just wasn't digging that Sam character or that Deena character very much. And while I was digging their characters more toward the end, and that's why I'm hopeful, like, maybe that stuff can get better, because they won't play massive roles in the next two movies, as they'll take place in different eras, but that storyline is going to be the thing that kind of all encompasses all of these movies, and kind of are in and out, I would imagine, to each of these. So I hope they can get a little bit better, but for me, their performances and their storyline stuff was just kind of mediocre. And that's where I thought most of the biggest issues with the movie came from. Now, on the good side of the performance scale, Benjamin Flores Jr. is fantastic. He is very much a Ben or a Mike from It. Like, he's the historian of Shadyside. He knows everything about all of the Shadyside murders. And, like, he, to the point where, like, he's got, like, a conspiracy board, and he's, you know, stealing internet from his neighbors so that he can be in these chat rooms talking to people about this stuff. Like, I love this character. I mean, you know me, I'm a nerd myself, and he hits all of the nerd checkpoints, and even kind of for me, being someone who was a bit shy as a kid, and a little bit awkward, like hit those beats where I was like, I could relate, I could just sync up with everything that Flores Jr. was doing as Josh. And then when he starts talking about the Shady Side murders, man, the confidence swing, like, he's socially awkward. And, like, there's a little thing that he does when he encounters Julia Rehwald's character, Kate, that I adored. Like, it was just this little thing where it was like, the nerd in me was like, I didn't specifically do that myself, but I could totally appreciate where you're coming from with that. And then to see that swing into this confidence of, like, I know everything about this subject matter, and like I'm gonna be one of the main people that kind of helps figure out what we do and how we get out of all of this. Like, I just loved it, and I thought Flores Jr. crushed it, and I can't wait to see what we get from him in the next two movies. Like, he is the thing I am most looking forward to see coming out of the 1994 film. The other two big standouts for me were Julia Rehwald, who plays Kate, and Fred Hechinger, who plays Simon. They are two best friends. They get pegged in the movie as like the druggies because they sell drugs to make money. Like, it's something that sounds like Kate did in the past, stopped, and now like she needs to get out of Shady Side, so she picked it up again. But that being said, they are the two most enjoyable characters in the movie. They are a ton of fun. They bring so much energy. Like, anytime this movie feels like it is dipping, you can guarantee that Julia Rehwald or Fred Hechinger are going to pick the movie up a lot with their performance. I mean, there are moments where I'm like, what is Hechinger on, man? Because he is just bringing so much energy, and it's fun. Everything around these two characters is a ton of fun, and they quickly became my favorites after Josh. Like, I loved Kate and Simon. Their friendship is just unique, and the way they play off each other, the chemistry between Rehwald and Hechinger, I thought was just really, really solid, and they were two of my favorite characters. I was maybe mild spoiler. I don't want to give anything away, but I wish that they would have handled their characters differently than they did. But I loved everything that they gave us. And then the rest of the cast, everybody that shows up does a good job. I mean, I think the only real big call-out would probably be Maya Hawke. She does a wonderful job in the opening. She, it takes place in a mall, which, of course, is right at home from her coming from Stranger Things. And all the things that you loved about her in Stranger Things, I think she delivers here. And it's one of those things where, like, she fits the bill, too, for, like, that opening, right? Like, something like a Drew Barrymore or some of the openings that we've seen with some of the other iconic, actors that became iconic. Like, Hawke fits that bill, and she delivers all that stuff wonderfully. And then I just personally just dug the serial killers or the slashers that we got in this movie. The main killer for 1994 is the Skull Mask Killer, played by Noah Bain Garrett. I think he does a wonderful job. Certainly fits the build. Can do the walk, can do the run. That's the other thing. 90s horror and slasher, you didn't get that slow, methodical walking. It was like full-on sprinting after you. And he plays all that stuff really well. And the character, I loved. The mask. The mask was so perfect. And in the world of slasher flicks, like, the mask is very important. And I think the skull mask that they used fits perfectly in that 90s realm. And what's cool is, like I said, there's an opening sequence, like title sequence, that gives you a lot of information about all of the murders that happen at Shady Side. And while we'll only hit 3 major eras, we have actually seen most of the characters that come from all of the big murder points. Like, when Josh goes through everything, we get like quick little flashbacks to things. And 2 of those killers are pulled directly into this story. One is the killer that we'll get in 1978, and I dug his character design. And mask, kind of like burlap sack-esque, but like very tight, totally also fits the bill for what you would have gotten in the 70s, so I dug that. And there is one other character that is a female that's pulled into this group of the murderers that we get to spend a little bit of time with in this one. And she's in it. She doesn't have a mask, but she definitely hits some of the other check boxes in horror when it comes to like crazed killers. And the things that they do and the story and how they utilize those characters, I really, really dug. Specifically in what they're able to accomplish in the last third of the movie with those 3. And everything that went into that stuff, like, they figure something out, like, about halfway through the movie, and then like I said, by the time you get to the end of the school sequence, everything that has to do with the three characters on the killer side that we get, I just really dug all of it. And while, like I said, this movie is not perfect, I think it is pretty solid, and it's a really good, I think, first step for what this trilogy could be. So those are all my non-spoiler thoughts on Fear Street Part 1, 1994. Which means it's time to give it a score, right? So let's get the C-Maniac meter up, and as I said, it's not a perfect movie. I think some of the pacing, some of the storyline beats, specifically around Deena and Sam, are not the best. But from a story perspective, the stuff on the overall arching story, like the way they're tying in this witchcraft into these slasher-like movie elements, I think is really cool. I think Janiak and this team in general definitely get a very firm grasp on the 90s horror slasher flick and execute all of those things really quite well. I think it's aesthetically pleasing. I think the score is solid. I think the soundtrack could have been a little bit stronger considering all the great music that there was in the 90s. But overall, I think it mixes together quite well. And while you have two performances that are kind of you have three performances that are really, really strong. So for me, I'm going 3.2 C-Maniacs out of 5. I don't think this is a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I think this is a fun movie. Like, this is an enjoyable flick. Like, it's an easy one to throw on and just have a good time. I think the next two movies are not going to be as fun, and I think they'll have a little bit more seriousness to them. And as, like I said, with what they get to by the end of the movie, like story-wise, I think there's a lot of fun places for it to go, and much stronger story places for it to go. So that makes it a good stepping stone. So 3.2 out of 5 ain't bad, and there's plenty of room for improvement, which is what I think we're going to see as we get to each one of these. I'm certainly most looking forward to 1666, and if the movies can improve with each one, I think this will be an overall success. But those are all my non-spoiler thoughts. I do want to give you guys a couple spoilery things, so if you don't want any spoilers, now would probably be the best time to bow out. If you want, you can come back and make sure, if you're going to bow out now, make sure you go down, hit those comments, hit that like button, hit that subscribe if you haven't. We'll do the whole spiel at the end of the spoiler end, but I'm going to move on, man. So 3, 2, 1, just a couple spoiler points. I really dig what they do in the third act of this movie, man. Like, the setups and the execution in what happens, like the whole idea of like these killers like clearly being some sort of possessed, reanimated something. Like, they kill the skeleton mask guy, like the skull mask killer, right away. Like, he dies in that opening sequence, and then he comes back to life, and like they do some cool things. Like, there's elements to characters or things that are going on that I really dug. Like, there's a fly that like lands on the killer's face before he becomes the killer, and I was like, that guy's gonna end up being the killer in this movie. And the fly kind of represents like this idea of like whatever the witch is and whatever her spell is on this town. Like, that's how you can pinpoint, I think, who her people are. So I was impressed with myself for picking it up right away. I was like, good job, Corey. But this concept of like having these slasher killers and it blending into this overall witch story, like the curse that she's laid out and how they utilize the idea of the killers only chasing specific people. And that is one of the things that was a little foggy, a little fuzzy. I think they could have cleaned up a little bit on the explanation, and maybe they will in the next installment. But the only connection that Sam's character ends up having and how she gets pulled in is that she disturbs the grave of this character, Sarah Fier, I think, or Fiore or something like that. But this witch from the 1600s, she disturbs her grave and her blood makes contact with it, which then is how she gets pulled in, and she is the only one that the slashers are going after. And I loved how they built to that realization and that reveal within the group of characters that we have, where it's like, oh, they're not coming after any of us, they're only going after her. Because there are times where like you see them run right by like characters and like, why did they do that? And it all ties to her blood. I think how that all played needed to be cleaned up a little bit, because like the blood comes from a nosebleed, and one of the other, Deena's character also has a nosebleed almost at the exact same moment. They don't ever touch on that, and that's where like some of the wonky stuff in and around those characters I just didn't like too much and could have cleaned it up. But the overall concept I thought was really dope. So like when you stage the end, like you're putting her blood on your clothes to try to draw these killers away from her so that they can execute what they assume is killing her and bringing her back. And that's one of the other things that I love too. There's lots of Easter eggs in this movie to like other movies in the horror realm, and just kind of nods and like you can tell that like the story is just coming from a place of love to the world of horror in general, which I really liked. And just the execution, like I said, from the time they realize that that's what's going on, like it involves them staging a trap in the school. They get all three of them trapped because they know this, and they blow them up. And then they all come back together, like out of the goop, and like reform, which I thought was dope. And I would like to see more of that, please. And then when they get to the grocery store, like just the lead up and the build up and the execution. And one of the things that I thought was kind of weak in the movie was that there was no real sense of urgency or fear for these characters. Like I thought our entire group was making it start to finish in this movie, and that was not the case. The third act, and that's where like again, you could have sprinkled some of that to make. Like, just even the close calls a little bit closer, make you feel a little bit more tense around this group. But, oh, man, when they finally decided to kill characters, did they kill characters, man? And I was bummed because they end up killing both Kate and Simon. And Kate has one of the gnarliest, like, death scenes I've seen in a movie in some time. I don't know if it's like part of the bread making process or if it's a pasta thing, but it's like this thing that's got like maybe 8 to 12 really fine metal like wires that's running, and it's like little mini saw. It's like a little mini saw basically, and homie just like pushes her head all the way through, and they build in this like cute little love story between her and Josh, and like Josh just kind of like gets to a point of like confidence, like, yes, man, I love this. Like, I can't wait to see what happens with them later. Like, that's one of those like, oh, found relation. Like, that was a relationship I liked more than the main relationship in the movie. And then they killed her, and it was gnarly. And just because of how strong the end of the movie was and some of the other kills were, I wanted to give you guys my reactions kind of based around some of that spoiler review content. So there you go, man. Those are all my spoiler thoughts. Now I'm going to let you check out all of my spoiler reactions. Oh! Nice. That girl. Let's go. Run away. Oh, that guy's dead. Whoever he is. See, I'm thinking it was their boy. Friend. Boyfriend. Oh, no book to save her that time. Ooh. Ah, it is him. I knew it. See? Ha! Knew it. I knew it. He's definitely possessed by some spirit. That's what it's gonna be. So it's all gonna tie together. Oh shit! Oh, dude, it's just pouring out of his head. How do they... Effects, man. Wow. So I guess we'll never know if he was possessed or not because point blank to the dome. Maya Hawk's not gonna make it either. It's a good opening. Strong opening, Netflix. You should put that whole thing in the opening 5-minute clip. Maybe just like the first 7 minutes or whatever. The back end of that opening scene definitely hit nice.
See? She's fine.
Oh, that's not fine.
Suck it up, literally, and swallow some suck it up. I never want to see you again. Great. Have a nice goddamn.
Uh-oh.
Did they get back together?
Friends right. What? see that coming.
Where the hell is Simon?
Oh no. Oh.
Simon, come on! Go, let's go!
Wait, she's not dead.
It doesn't make sense. It's not.
Oh, they fucked up. Oh no. Oh, she is so dead. Oh no! Oh my! Oh no! Oh! Oh, that was horrible. Man. Man, they're killing all my favorite people now. This kid just so much trouble. Die already. Why won't you die? Tied up the phone cord. Man, I told you, I freaked out when they killed Kate, man. Because one, I was just upset about it, but then it was like, it was one of the most gnarly kills I've seen in a movie recently. It was wonderful. So I hope you guys enjoyed my reactions there. And that's it, man. That's all the Seaman's got for you on Fear Street Part 1, 1994. That means it is your turn. I want you to go down below, hit that comment section, let me know everything you're thinking, man. Did you enjoy this one? Like I said, I don't think it's the best, and I can definitely understand people who aren't a fan of it. But I can definitely, obviously, understand anybody that did enjoy it. So where'd you land, man? Did you like this one? Did you not like this one? If you liked it, what was working? Was it the 90s elements? Or the 90s slasher elements? I didn't think the 90s elements throughout the course of the whole movie were really strong, although there are some wonderful 90s nods in there. Was that the stuff that was working for you? Was it the performances? Was it the kill sequences? If it wasn't working for you, was it the storyline beats? Was it Deena and Sam, kind of like for me? Anything you're thinking, man, good, bad, indifferent about Fear Street Part 1, 1994, down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the Seaman as we approach this Friday's Fear Street 1978. I got my reaction for that trailer coming up after this. You want to be here for when we get to 1666 next week. You just like anything I'm doing in the world of movie reviews and TV reviews, trailer reactions. You want to show a little love, support the old Seaman. You haven't yet? Well, then come, join C-Maniac Nation. Jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. Until next time, for the Seaman's Cinema, sit down. I've been the Seaman. I am signing off. Peace. Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.